All right, let's talk about AI, but probably not in the way you're used to. See, for so long, we've thought of it as just a tool, right? Something you pick up, use, and then put away. But what happens when that tool becomes the room? What happens when AI is literally the environment we live and think in? And that leads us to a really critical question. Because when AI isn't just an app you open, but this persistent, ambient intelligence that's always on, subtly shaping your choices, your behaviors, well, our old rulebook for tech just doesn't work anymore. It starts to fall apart. So where do we even begin to tackle this? Okay, so here's the fundamental problem. All our ways of thinking about tech, user interfaces, ethical audits, the whole shebang, they were all built for a world where there was a clear line. Here's the human, and over there is the machine. But as that line gets blurrier and blurrier, that rulebook is basically useless. We have to find a completely new way of looking at the entire system. And to build that new framework, you know what we have to do? We've got to go back. We need to understand how we even got here in the first place. And our journey actually starts way back in the mid-20th century, with the very first tries at creating a science of complex systems. This new field was called cybernetics, and its goal was, well, it was super ambitious. They wanted to find the universal laws of regulation that applied to everything. Didn't matter if you were a person, a company, or a machine. It was all about two things: control and communication. Now, cybernetics gave us a lot of the language we still use today to talk about systems. The big one, the most important one, is the idea of the feedback loop. It's this simple but powerful concept. A system can watch itself and correct its own course to stay stable. The perfect example? A thermostat, right? It gets too cold, the heat kicks on. Gets too hot, it shuts off. That right there is a classic cybernetic system in action. But, and this is a huge but, here's the critical limitation. Cybernetics was really designed for simple, closed systems that have just one clear goal, like, keeping a room at 72 degrees. The real world, though, it's messy. It's open. It's packed with conflicting goals. Our social systems, our tech systems, they're almost never that simple. So the cybernetic model, it was a vital first step for sure, but it just wasn't going to cut it. Okay, so the next big leap in thinking came when scientists started to challenge a really fundamental idea, something we almost take for granted, the notion that your mind is just locked away inside your skull. And this new theory is called distributed cognition. The core argument is that thinking isn't just something that happens in your brain. No, it's a process that's spread out, distributed, across our bodies, our tools, and our environment. You want a great example? Think about a ship's navigation team. Their collective mind isn't just in the captain's head, right? It exists in the way the crew, their charts, and all their instruments work together. The thinking, the cognition, is in the entire system. And this leads to something we all do every single day. It's called cognitive offloading. Every time you save a phone number to your contacts instead of trying to memorize it, or you fire up your GPS instead of actually learning the route, that's you offloading a cognitive task. Your smartphone, in a very real way, has become an extension of your memory. But there's a trade-off here, isn't there? On one hand, offloading frees up a ton of brain power for other things, which is great. But on the other hand, it can make us dependent. If you rely completely on GPS all the time, your own internal sense of direction, those map-making skills, they might just start to fade away. And this trade-off is absolutely central to understanding our relationship with modern AI. So, this whole idea of the extended mind became even more important once computers started becoming personal. And two new fields popped up to study our relationship with them: human-computer interaction, you might know it as HCI, and science and technology studies, or STS. And these fields were incredibly important. They're the reason designers and engineers had to start thinking about the actual human being on the other side of the screen. They gave us all these concepts we take for granted now, like usability and user experience, and this big idea that technology and society are constantly shaping each other. But even these really advanced fields held on to one critical and now totally outdated idea. They called it the interface assumption. Basically, they assumed there was always a clear line, a screen, a keyboard, a mouse that separated the human from the computer. But what happens when the computer isn't behind a screen anymore? What happens when it's in the walls, in your car, in the very air around you? Suddenly, the interface is gone. And that brings us right up to today. With this ambient AI all around us, we have to make a huge shift. We have to stop thinking about governing a tool and start thinking about governing an entire cognitive system. And that's going to require a whole new approach. Now, when you hear people talk about governing AI today, the conversation is almost always about AI ethics. And look, that work is absolutely vital. We have to audit algorithms for bias, we have to make sure they're fair, and that their decisions are transparent. But focusing only on the algorithm, it's kind of like checking one part of a car's engine, but totally ignoring the steering, the brakes, and the person behind the wheel. So let's really break down the difference here. On one side, you have AI ethics. It's typically focused on a single output. Was this one decision fair? But on the other side, you have this new idea of cognitive systems governance, and it zooms way out to look at the whole persistent environment. It asks, how is the system changing our behavior over time? So the thing you're analyzing isn't just the algorithm anymore, it's the entire socio-technical system, the sensors, the code, the people, and the primary concern isn't just bias anymore. It's about that slow, subtle wearing away of human context and our ability to make our own choices. Okay, so how do we actually do this? It sounds big, right? Well, this new approach needs new tools. For starters, we need something called cognitive impact assessments. Think of them like forecasts for how a new AI might change the way people think and behave. Then we need adaptation audits to regularly check in and see how our behaviors are actually changing because of the system. And finally, something called organizational drift mapping. This is to see how things like authority and responsibility are shifting, often without anyone even noticing, inside a team or a whole company. When you put it all together, this points to a really powerful new role. And it's not just for leaders or designers, it's for all of us. And that idea is called cognitive stewardship. So what is cognitive stewardship? It's the idea that we have to become active, responsible managers of our own cognitive ecosystems. This isn't a one-time ethics check you just tick off a list. No, it's the constant, ongoing work of making sure that as our environments get smarter, they're actually designed to boost our humanity, not wear it down. And what does that actually require from us? Well, it means we have to take responsibility for the whole system, from the sensors gathering data to the algorithms making suggestions, and all the way to the humans who act on them. It means we have to be constantly on the lookout for those slow, subtle shifts in our own behavior and decision-making. And, maybe most importantly, it means we need to create real, explicit policies to protect the stuff that makes us human, our context, our stories, and our ability to find meaning. So, we'll leave you with this final question to think about. As that line between our minds and our machines just melts away, and our environment becomes a real cognitive partner, who's ultimately responsible for the choices we make, for the people we become? The answer, more and more, is that we all are.